Do you exclude them?
That depends on how powerful they are. Now, if you have a powerful stakeholder with very negative views, I can give you an example. Male circumcision in Uganda, where you have a political head questioning the validity and the value of circumcision. And actually, going as far as saying, no, this can't be. Okay? So it depends on the influence and the power wielded by the stakeholder. If you have someone who's a proponent for uncontrolled births, and you're trying to sell family planning, birth control, etc., you can be in trouble if they're powerful. If they're just someone you can neglect, then you can actually not invite them to your meeting. But if it's a powerful person who wields either delegated power or financial power or no. There are different kinds of power. There are different kinds of power. There are people who can influence, not like religious leaders. Okay? They appeal. They have that power of appealing and they can control a situation. So you need to actually make them understand. You need to engage with them more closely to see how you can get their thinking changed, to mitigate the impact of their influence on your mission.
But I
If
thought,
they are powerful.
I thought that to understand how each stakeholder behaves, and for me that acts as a beginning point to try and strategize.
Yes.
So my thinking would be not really to want to live with them, simply because of their views, but rather to use that opportunity to get closer and understand how best you really can work with them.
And that is
I have one second example. In the villages where we come from, whenever we organize weddings, there are these guys with supernatural powers who claim to have, and they say they make the wedding. So you really have to get to them, because otherwise the whole wedding day will be soaked, and you know it. So you slaughter your 100 kilogram cow. They have almost 10% of it because you didn't start.
Christmas, you've been hijacked. We won't get into that, but it's lunchtime conversation. Feel free to engage Christmas and propose solutions for this dilemma. He could be a popular person in his village if you can find a solution to this challenge.
Yeah, but there's very some other persons they got an accident. They got because they have the issue.
Absolutely.
So someone may be negative, it's just
Because their knowledge is limited. Yeah, so you look at what they know, even their involvement or the level of engagement. As a researcher, how much have you engaged them already? Maybe they are opposing you because you haven't engaged them. We've experienced that in the communities we are working with, where key stakeholders, local leaders, have negative views towards the work, the very good work being done, because they haven't been engaged. They say, I'm engaging the community health workers, what? As we don't even understand your thing. They really want to understand your work. And you know what I mean. They want to understand it. Okay? So then if you understand them, then you help them understand your work. Then they will support you and you have a chance of going further. I want us to look at strategic communication. Once you know your audience, you wouldn't use a policy brief for a local chief, for instance. Once you know your audience, you time your moments, you package your products, you make yourself ready, okay? So there are different things which are required, okay? How can you be strategic in your communication, knowing the audience you have? So I'm running through this strategic communication, what it is, and I'm repeating some of the things Nazreen mentioned, around improving the knowledge uptake process. One thing about strategic communication is you can communicate. All of you are communicators. But how are you communicating? Okay? Any communication effort that is not practicing strategic communication full-time is dysfunctional. It can be ad hoc or it can be strategic. So you choose, you decide whether you're going ad hoc or you're going strategic. And I'll agree with Christopher that we don't have all that time to develop products, it's tight as researchers. Our plates are full, okay? But we can get a small side plate to see where we can put some of these things. So strategic communication is actually looking at how you can target your stakeholders in very specific targeted ways with an expected outcome. It has to have an objective. That's one of the things. What is the objective of communicating? What change do you want to see? So that once you've communicated, it might not be immediately, but maybe down the road, with continuous interaction, you see some change and you're able to say that, you see, now they have changed the policy around maternal health and health workers. Now they have done ABCD, and some of the information I communicated has been incorporated. So you need to have objectives, okay? What you want your activities to achieve in an ideal, what you want to achieve is not in an ideal world actually, in a real world, not ideal, it's supposed to be in the real world, okay? Who you're trying to reach, that is the component of a strategic, of our communication strategy, your audiences, what are the characteristics of your audiences? If you're going to use television to try and reach the indigent who might not have access to it, and it's the most popular means you're trying to use. For instance, you're advertising immunization days, and you realize that it's those people who have very low immunization coverage, and you're running masses of adverts on television about the importance of immunization on your national television for reasons best known to yourself. You might actually be shooting outside the not even the pool, you're outside the entire, what is that board called? That board, you're outside it completely. So you need to know your stakeholders. Where do they get the information from? I can tell you, for instance, we've worked with the community health workers, trying to get them to educate mothers. But one of the most important findings we got is that mothers are actually more likely to get information from the health workers. They will tell you. We asked, where did you get this information from? And they will tell you, no, some of them were getting it from the community health workers, but the majority were getting it from the health facilities. And interestingly, at least 80 to 90% of them actually get to that facility interface. So for us, the interpretation of that is to work with the health workers to make sure that any opportunity they get is an opportunity to impart some learning for the mothers, because they are the most critical source. So once you find that your people are more likely to get messages from the media, the newspapers, then you target that. Okay, so you study that and see what are the challenges and opportunities achieving your desired objectives, both internally and externally. Okay, for instance, you're putting out radio messages, but you put on the radio messages when people are out in the field, they don't go with their radios. So you want to look at all these things and say, am I being strategic or am I wasting resources? Okay? What do you want to say and to whom? Okay? And I wanted to say something. Your research objectives are not the same as your communication objectives. Okay? Do not think that the research is to find out the prevalence of whatever thing you're finding out, and that is going to be your communication objective. If you find that the prevalence of malaria is, say, 30%, then your message is to influence the powers that be to reduce that, to do the different things to reduce that. So it's not the same message. You're interpreting your findings and their implications, and then you make the recommended actions. How long will it take to accomplish what you need to accomplish, and what resources you need to do that strategic communication? What are the risks? Okay? You need to evaluate your engagements. I also had, you need to anticipate non-use risks. Okay? I had a section which targets the different kinds of, it's a kind of exercise where you require your learners to brainstorm on preferred channels of communication for specific people. For instance, MPs might work better in a workshop, policy briefs, interpersonal communication, etc. Okay? Civil societies have their preferred. You look at how strong these channels are and how weak they are before you choose. Okay? And I have references there. I actually have references for most of this stuff. Sorry, Nazreen, I didn't acknowledge it, but I have references for most of the content I have. The last bit is packaging. Packaging is actually the most important. Unfortunately, it has had to come last. The last bit is packaging, evidence. So all these resources are going to be made available for you, and you'll be able to adapt them to your learners to see what exercises or how you can phrase the exercises based on prevailing issues, what you can take out, what you can add in. Okay? The last one is packaging, evidence, structuring, and messaging and structuring. And by the end of this session, you would want the learners to be able to understand what a message is, think through constructing strong arguments, prioritize information. You don't want to come out at your audience with a bulk of information and you leave it up to them to pick and choose which one to take. But also to situate research products in the context where they're supposed to be, and to equip learners with the skills to package. In Ghana, where they were walking around maternal newborn practices. Some of these slides are adopted from the Institute of Development Studies, but others are adopted from ODI, Overseas Development Institute. The challenge of effective communication is turning this into this. Okay? You don't want to overwhelm. You don't want to overwhelm your audience. Yeah? At the end of the day, you cripple progress. You want it to be a smooth, enjoyable process. So you need to package carefully. Proper packaging usually lightens. It highlights key information. That is the whole purpose of a policy brief. Vis-a-vis an article. In the article, you do all the science things. We adjusted for this. We used this post hoc analysis, and we dropped these items from the analysis. The policymaker has already put down that thing. When they read something they don't understand. Okay? It sends the message in the right direction. It makes you see what is the best channel to send this evidence, and also you're able to track or monitor how effective a certain channel is. There are different delivery channels. There are publications, that is written, And by publications, I don't mean only the scientific. There is online platforms, there is events. Some people use events as a means to communicate messages. For instance, for community people, really, when they have an event and they are engaged, they can incorporate some kind of issues there. Then there is the media. Sorry, it's a bit too bright. What is a message? What do you say and to whom? So you have the main point. You need to prioritize. And prioritize, I don't mean reducing the message to the simplest possible terms, but it's knowing which messages, are key, critical. I know that we had an experience with Elizabeth Kirapa when the Parliament, the Social Committee of Parliament, invited us with how many hours notice? It was 30 minutes notice to appear before them and advise them on a bill they were tabling around maternal health. And we were not given time to run into the research and say, now what? Just appear there, they fire you questions, you advise. It was a challenge because we asked them, we told them that, look, can we engage with you another day? They said, no, actually, we want you to come back. We want you. So for 2 days, we went to the first day and we were given about an hour or so. And of course, they do most of the talking. And then you go a second. It's like you're invited to listen. And then the second day, they were actually more willing to listen to us. But they asked us very interesting questions because they had captured some evidence in there. But the evidence was also corrupted by advocacy evidence. Where I can give you a very specific example. One of the clauses, it was actually number 3, one of the most important strategies they had put in place was for government to compensate families of families which lose a mother during childbirth. And I think that one time it came up after community health workers. So you can see their thinking had been influenced that this is important. This makes them popular with the masses. But we told them, look, what is a mother worth? What is the life? What would you pay someone to be comfortable about losing a mother during childbirth? Can any of you give me an estimate?
And families will start conniving with their workers.
So it's just thinking about it. So we were able to actually convince them to drop this clause based on our argument that it wouldn't change anything. Instead of investing in life, they are investing in death. And that did require us going and doing the research to see whether compensation of mothers reduces maternal mortality. Because you can't have money going to death. You're actually waiting for a death to occur instead of preventing the death. So we actually told them, if you have a rotting wound, do you just cover it with a bandage and just look away and it's looking nice? We told them that is what you would be doing in this case. Mothers are dying, and having this clause would actually, you might find, more mothers even die so that they can apparently benefit. But you also introduce, you're not solving the problem. You're not solving the problem. So you can see that if you help people to prioritize things, it doesn't require making them stupid. Because I'm not saying the parliamentarians are stupid, but if I was there, I wouldn't put that clause there. But the advocacy groups are there. They come with the evidence. They convince them that when a mother, this happens, that happens, so you need to pay. Government needs to pay. Maybe it will be more careful. But we don't know. Okay? So one of the exercises was to have participants write down key messages emerging from their most recent research. And I need to highlight that when I developed this content or tried to put it together, I put it together with the understanding that this is a work in progress for each country to look at and put together exercises, put together content. But also, based on the curriculum, it was supposed to be a 3-day thing where you can, if it's full-time, it takes 3 days of engagement to cover the content. So you might see me behaving like an animated lecturer. This animation is as a result of compressing myself from 3 days to 1.5 hours. So there are exercises in there. And one exercise is about a learner writing messages for different people. If you were talking about health worker absenteeism, how would you communicate your research findings to the media? How would you communicate it to a policy maker? How would you communicate it, for instance, to a community member? Because all these messages are packaged differently. And some of us tend to package the message for other researchers. Okay? So if you're saying that the prevalence of absenteeism is 40% of health workers, if you're talking to the media, you might tell them at any one point, according to my research, at least 2 out of 5 health workers are not there. Even the community, okay? You tell the community, out of 5 health workers, at any one time, 2 are missing. And what are the implications of that, okay? But when you start coming with your standard deviations and your means and all, you've lost them. So it's important to have this kind of exercise to see whether we are still thinking that we are communicating to other researchers, or we are communicating and we are able to repackage the same finding to the audience, okay? I remember one of the researchers we worked with, we did a trial which revealed that a certain combination of drugs actually suppresses HIV. We have a lot of HIV research here. So she was interviewed by a media person. And unfortunately, she allowed the media person to publish before she looked through it. So the following day, the news was that cure for HIV has been found by our own doctor here in Uganda. She said her phone, she had to switch it off because she was called by USAID, which was funding her research. She was called by BBC, which read about it in the results. She was called all over. Simply because the media person needs to sell the papers. So,
couldn't you have taken advantage of that to speak?
Who are you going to speak to? How many of them?
I mean, if you have BBC calling you now, you take advantage of that.
So as you can see, people interpret your results differently, and it's up to you to maintain some control of the message by ensuring, oh my God, I have been warned to finish. Okay? So there is information here on messages, how you have success with your messages. Don't make your messages like this. Yeah? Your messages they should be almost like this. Okay? And some of them, I have to confess, when it comes to research, this might be a challenge. But try as much as possible not to make them, they should be closer to this than the previous, okay? Craft your messages to where you can dispel existing beliefs. One of the things that I know is prevalent here is that we usually say, facility deliveries they are important for reducing maternal mortality. But when you go to the facilities, they are not equipped, they have no health workers, they don't have this. And you go there and find people who are not actually equipped to deliver mothers are the ones who are doing these deliveries. So you wonder, is it possible that facility deliveries could actually increase the risk for maternal mortality? The unexpectedness of that message changes the way people believe. It can shift your beliefs, and you're like, I always thought the solution was facility deliveries. And on the other hand, they could also pose a risk, okay? You need to have data. It needs to be credible. For the news and even the media, actually people like emotional messages. They like emotional messages. The work we are doing in the East in Manifest, one time I went to, for support supervision, and I found this midwife who had been on call since February 28th, because the other midwife had gone on study leave. And this was April. She's one midwife. But what made me feel so bad is that there was a small room full of people sitting on the ground. She has to attend to each one of them, and she had a broken arm. And what the media knows is that these health workers are thieves, they are terrible, they have a bad attitude, they don't want to work. But what is the emotionality of this is they get to see the human. So some of these stories, it might not be hard data, but it's actually a fact. Okay? They raise the profile of the situation actually going on. A story like that in the media can have even more impact than your published scientific article in BMJ. Because it brings the reality in the faces of the policymakers. Okay? This thing is going off, so I think it's also asking me to go off. I've been given 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes ago. So there is what they call the elevator pitch. How to do an elevator pitch. There is an exercise. An elevator pitch is you packaging your information in the time it takes for a lift to go up from the ground floor to the 5th floor, for instance. If you have to encounter a policymaker and they ask you, so what do you think I should do about these health extension workers? And you say, no, health extension workers are a good idea, but one, most of the workers we have on the ground are illiterate. So giving them more training would be important. 2, you can't expect them to take on this entire burden of looking after the community without being compensated. They will stop working.
And now the lift pitch.
And then the lift pitch. But you prioritize your messages, and at least he has gone away with those 2. And then the computer has gone off. The computer has gone off. It has no battery. It went off. But within this last slide on packaging, we have exercises. One thing I can advise, there is an exercise about producing a policy brief. How many of you have produced a policy brief? Others, I would encourage you to see, based on the guidelines provided, the reading material, produce one before you actually attempt to teach another person to do it. See, so the purpose of this is for you to get that kind of exposure before you can impart this experience on others. So what I've tried to advise is the different products, why they're useful, what their strengths are, and how, step by step, how you can actually make those products. So I would encourage our trainers here to delve into this. Write a policy brief, have it looked at, see whether it's actually capturing the messages you want to capture. Get it reviewed by your colleagues to see whether it's good enough. Who knows, maybe even internally in the Africa Hub, you can review some policy briefs at a fee. Then we have fact sheets. Fact sheets are usually the facts. You can prepare a fact sheet about community health workers, which shows the literacy rate of community health workers is at this level. They make only 1 or 2 visits per month. They would mind to be compensated about this per month. Those are the facts based on your research. Then you write the implications of this. If you have your community health workers, and most of them are trained at the level of P4, what can they do? So what you give them depends on their level of conceptualization. So a fact sheet just puts facts together for a person who is going to do the results. So I don't know, maybe I'm assuming, how many of you have written a fact sheet before? Fact sheets are also good packaging. And in this content, there are 71 slides. I have reached slide 21. But if you're patient, I can go through. But I won't. So the elevator pitch is what we have just gone through. So there are policy briefs, fact sheets, newspapers. We have used videos to actually communicate messages. Videos on the ground, packaging the message, and at the same time putting in text and say, did you know that 20% mothers suffer this? Do you know that referral? So they are looking at the messages, but they are also getting the facts within the video. One thing I know is, while policymakers might not read even a policy brief, they are willing to watch a video, put it there, put in the facts, and they are like, Don't make the videos too long though. 5 minutes, 10 minutes at most, not long. It shouldn't be something that puts them to sleep, okay? So in there are policy briefs, how you structure them. In there we have a template. I have some readers for templates. We have the media in there, understanding the media, what they require, how to write a newspaper article, advantages, press release. One of the things we've been doing, I'm working with partners from 8 countries in Africa to help them do this package research, communicate, plan engagements. And one of the things we've advised them to do to avoid their findings being misconstrued is before they do an engagement, they invite media, but they provide a 1-page to give to the media person on the results. And we found none of them has had a very bad response. The article gets published, but it's more likely to stick to the facts if you've provided. Instead of talking, someone asks a question, another one asks, and before you know it, the message is picked from the audience, a complaint. But having that, a kind of press release helps control the message. So there's a guideline on how to write a good story, structures of stories. Try them before you attempt to train. Key thing is you need to switch off your researcher brain and work like a journalist. Then there is a guideline on the fact sheet, how to write a fact sheet. We've produced some fact sheets and videos as well. So in this thing, we would want, by the time the people you're training go away, they have had some hands-on experience in the different products, the different messaging, so that they live with these skills. Actually, they can write a policy brief, they can write a newspaper article, they can write a fact sheet as some of the assignments which can be used to evaluate the usefulness of the course. Thank you. And then there are references, and like I said, I have packaged readers, among which is the knowledge translation toolkit. So there is a mass of readers which I've already put together for you to use, augmenting or amputating this.
Just 1 minute. I wanted to talk about
GetYourNet. The Knowledge Translation Network Africa has been running since 2013. It's a coalition of 8 research groups in 9 countries. Eric is one of the countries we are supporting. He has experience writing a press release, and I think it has come out well for him. He has written one, and his messages have not been misinterpreted. And Eric has also trained others on the content, some of the content we've given. So the Knowledge Translation Network has Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, Ghana, Senegal, Ethiopia, South Africa. My brain, Guys, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night. So what we do is we help researchers actually draw key messages from their research. We also help them engage their stakeholders. For Eric and his team who are doing that, facilitate that engagement and see how it can be improved. We support them to fund and organize these engagements and how to do them. For instance, we help them draft an agenda. You know, we are used to having an agenda which has no objective. We help them, if they have a dissemination agenda, it has to have an objective. What do you want to achieve? And it has to be a KT goal, not just a researcher going on the pulpit and preaching to the masses. So we've done that with them. I can't say yet how successful we've been. Maybe Eric will give testimonies later when I'm out of the room. Yeah, so that's what we are doing. And we are planning to also develop resources, but also to evaluate how what we are doing is working or not working.
So thank you very much. I'm sure
we have a website.
Our occasionally can work. We know we have been working closely with you as Africa Hub, but then the members probably might be interested in how they continue to work with KTNet. So thank you very much, Susan, again for this. Having taken time, you reached here at about 3 a.m. and I'm aware that you're actually going back tomorrow. So it's really been, it's really been very interesting for us to have you here. And how wonderful was it to wrap everything we've been talking about with how to communicate. I think it was really a good flow of message. Now I recognize that we are out of
Paid talk, and you limit talking 2 words. It becomes difficult. I will talk 2 things. One, what is the expectation from the time we live here? We expect that each country group will hold a training. We don't prescribe the audience. That will be discussed by the various country groups to decide. But 2, which I think is important, you noted that this training took 3 days. But we do understand you will take more days. So we expect that you will repackage the material plus your own experiences so that you can make the training more effective to the type of audience that you are going to train. And the last but not least, we would expect some feedback now that we also have learned about communication. A 2-way communication will be good so that we can use your experience in terms of the material you modified and in terms of the experience in teaching, so that at least we can use those lessons throughout all the countries in the Africa Hub. Thank you.
So on behalf of FHA, I want to thank all of you very much for coming for this meeting. We know you've traveled far and wide from South Africa, Susan from Ghana and back, the Uganda team from Kampala and back every day. We appreciate you've been very attentive throughout the session. We really appreciate your commitment. We particularly want to thank Zaina and John. Getting John for a whole week is no mean achievement, so we really appreciate Christmas as well, we appreciate all the effort. So we want to say thank you very much. Like we've already said, we are all ready to go for this training. You've been chosen because you're reliable, you're dependable, you're smart, but you have the task of getting yourself ready before every training so that you can meet the expectations of the team that you'll be training. And as a hub, we are hoping that we can be a center of excellence, doing many trainings. So we hope that the ones that we shall start with will just be one amongst many trainings. We are going to be applying for some funding to facilitate this, and we want to ask you to pray with us that that funding can come through so that we can be able to meet and be able to continue with these trainings. And lastly, we had over the challenge where often we are not ready to respond to the policymakers when they want that information. So the task is back to each one of us in our countries to go back and see how we can be more responsive to the needs of our policymakers. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure for us to have such a committed audience. Thank you so much.
Okay, I didn't know I was going to have the final word. So here we go. On behalf of Sarah, who couldn't be here, Lygia, who left us yesterday, I guess I am now the voice of FHS Baltimore. I want to echo a lot of what Elizabeth said. It's been a fantastic last 3 days. Thank you for all your hard work. The curriculum as it currently stands is not in final format. And it would be really great if you could respond to Crispus's request for how we can improve the content of this curriculum as you're going forward. It's not final, it shouldn't be distributed as final. But I think the presentations we've had over the last 3 days, the discussions that have been so rich in terms of your own experiences, that we can embed as case studies into this curriculum will be really exciting. And so if we can continue to move forward as a group, given where we were 4 years ago as Africa Hub, where we started with a capacity assessment and needs assessment in our schools, to actually implementing the priorities that came out of that needs assessment. I think it's really impressive where we've got to in 4 years. And I think it would be great to see where we go from here forward. And so if you can give yourselves a round of applause, it's been a lot of hard work to where we are today. And also to thank the organizers, Elizabeth and her team here in Uganda, for ushering us through this process the first 2 days for the focal person meeting, the last 3 days for the TOT, Crispus, Zainab, John, all the logistics, and the folks here at Serena that have made this stay very comfortable. Thank you very, very much. And we look forward to where we next meet and where that happens. But as you roll out this training in your own context, please try and document what's working and what's not working. It might be a really interesting lesson learned for other institutions that are doing similar work into how we developed our curriculum, how we implemented our curriculum, and also how we modified it into our individual context. It'll make for a really nice piece that eventually might result in publication, but it may also result in some kind of issue brief or policy brief for our institutions, our schools of public health, into effective ways to develop a curriculum across multiple contexts and how they can enrich our experiences in our own context. So please document that, and we'll see what we can do with that, maybe in a year from now or so. Thank you so much.
I just want to invite you for lunch, but to say thank you for coming, thank you for your time, thank you for your participation, and I'll be, in the next couple of days, I'll be communicating to you the next concrete steps, the issues we have discussed, and the next concrete steps. So I'm sure, just look out for that email the next few days, so that we see how we move going forward. So thank you for coming.